The Watcher in the Woods. It began with a move. Sarah and her family had decided to leave the bustling city behind and settle in the quiet countryside. Their new home, an old Victorian house on the edge of a dense forest, seemed like the perfect retreat. With its ivy-covered walls and sprawling, creaky interiors, it had a charm that Sarah couldn't resist, despite the uneasy feeling it gave her. On their first night, as Sarah unpacked boxes in her bedroom, she glanced out the window and saw a shadow flicker between the trees. She paused, squinting into the darkness, but saw nothing. Shaking it off as her imagination, she returned to her work. The next morning, her younger brother, Tim, was ecstatic. He had already ventured into the woods. "It's huge," he said, his eyes wide. "And there's this cool treehouse." "Treehouse?" Sarah frowned. No one had mentioned a treehouse when they bought the property. But Tim was insistent, dragging her out to see it. They wandered deep into the woods until they found it. The treehouse was old, its wooden planks rotting and its ladder barely hanging together. Strange carvings covered the walls, symbols and crude drawings of faces, twisted and leering. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. "We shouldn't go up there," she said. But Tim was already climbing. Inside, the air felt colder, and the floor groaned under their weight. In the corner, there was a single chair facing a broken window. On the chair sat a doll, its face cracked, one glass eye missing. Something about it was wrong. Sarah grabbed Tim's arm and insisted they leave. That night, Sarah woke to a soft tapping at her window. Her room was on the second floor. Heart pounding, she turned on the light and crept to the window. No one was there, but her eyes were drawn to the woods. The treehouse window glowed faintly. In the following days, the tapping continued, sometimes at her window, sometimes at Tim's. The glow in the treehouse became a nightly occurrence. And then Tim started talking about her. "Who's her?" Sarah asked one morning over breakfast. "The lady in the woods," Tim said, as if it were obvious. "She watches us." Sarah's stomach turned. Their parents dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. That evening, she decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, she made her way to the treehouse. The forest was eerily silent. When she climbed inside, the chair was empty, no doll, no markings, just dust and decay. But as she turned to leave, she saw something in the corner, a small pile of objects, buttons, coins, and a lock of hair. Her flashlight flickered, and the air grew icy. A whisper brushed past her ear, "You shouldn't be here." Panicked, she scrambled down the ladder and ran back to the house. Later that night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept hearing faint whispers, growing louder until they seemed to come from inside her room. Then, a voice, cold and rasping, "I'm watching you." Her bedroom door creaked open. Tim stood there, his eyes wide and vacant. "She wants you to come," he said in a monotone voice. Before Sarah could respond, he turned and walked out. Against her better judgment, she followed him. He led her through the darkened house and out into the woods, straight to the treehouse. Inside, the air was thick with an unnatural chill. The doll was back on the chair, its cracked face turned toward Sarah. Tim walked to the corner, kneeling by the pile of objects, and began whispering incoherently. The treehouse groaned, as if alive. Shadows danced along the walls, and the whispers grew deafening. Sarah screamed for Tim to leave, but he didn't move. The shadows coalesced into a figure, a woman with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "You shouldn't have come," the figure hissed. Sarah grabbed Tim and pulled him down the ladder. They ran through the woods, the sound of footsteps and laughter echoing behind them. When they finally reached the house, they slammed the door shut. The tapping started again that night, and every night after. Sarah tried to convince her parents to leave, but they refused. Then one morning, Tim was gone. His bed was empty, his shoes by the door. And in the woods, the treehouse glowed brighter than ever.